Right. So that's you're following Nietzsche's will to power sort of approach, right?
Yes.
That we're saying, well, if we could just do away with this Christian slave morality, then everybody could go back to some sort of Roman notion of we fight it out and you resolve disputes through duels, right? That sort of thing. Whoever's the strongest wins, right? Will to power. That's
And that I mean that seems to me to be the natural way.
And it has been for much of human history, right? I'm not denying that. But what I am suggesting to you is that there's been a moral progress over time as we've built our society and civilization up to where we no longer think in those terms because it's not best for us generally, right?
But then I would say that
But the
then
individuals might defect, though. Yeah.
then there becomes a conflict. There becomes a conflict between your vision of social betterment versus my vision of I want to be a Roman and be who I want to be. And I think this is where I think we're actually arriving at where I think we could both agree that if there is this struggle between the group, their preferences, and my preferences as an individual, this is where I get with sort of atheistic morality. It does boil down to arbitrary wills to power. The will to power of the group to preserve the order that they want as the group, and the will to power of individuals and or subgroups who want to organize society according to their values and their preferences. And so in my mind, I think Nietzsche had it right. It's who's going to win the power struggle. Christianity has become dominant in the world, but is that because they have a better system per se, or is it because they've been more ruthless in their power in basically convincing people to adopt slave morality? But that we could rise up and reject that slave morality and embrace the hero morality and the Ubermensch sort of idea, like he had said. I mean, I guess I just look at that and I go, it all seems to come down to arbitrary wills to power, battling it out in a world of limited resources.
And I think if you're going from Nietzsche and that perspective, I think you're very much on the right track. But within a non-religious framework, there is no scripture, right? There is no dogma. Just because Nietzsche said it doesn't mean it's law, right? So there are a lot of existential philosophers who disagree with some of Nietzsche's stuff. Like I kind of follow Albert Camus, and I think that direction actually takes you in a position that gets you back towards being more moral in sense. And also, but I guess what I'm saying is Nietzsche isn't the end all of atheism, right? Worthwhile to read, worthwhile to understand. He raises some good points, but then many other philosophers have taken those points.
I'm curious, how would you reconcile this? I tend to find two atheists that I have a lot of respect for, and you can correct where you think these guys are wrong, are both Nietzsche and Foucault. I actually think Foucault is actually brilliant, despite having huge issues with him, obviously, for a variety of different reasons. But I think he diagnoses the nature of power dynamics within a society at the level of sort of cultural warfare within the linguistics that we use and the way that our socialization is ultimately about certain preferences that people have collectively as groups, and them trying to push those preferences onto other people to join their tribe, essentially, to battle for a worldview that they have of the way they think things ought to be, right? There are these moral sort of currents in society of the way things, but in my mind, the moral system of the Aztecs, the moral system of whoever, these are just different individuals conglomerating with other individuals to satisfy what they think will bring themselves individually the greatest good. It's kind of like an alliance of individuals to say this sort of life will bring us to ourselves the highest level of well-being. Human beings are inherently selfish in that sense that they, and I don't want to, maybe selfish is a bad word, but self-interested first, right? And
yes,
so
yeah.
in my mind, the way to frame the human experience has been like Foucault says, it's a power network of people competing with one another for dominance of their particular what they think will bring them the greatest well-being. And I don't see a way, and this is where I maybe want to invite you. How does people like Camus and others, how would they address that to make it not just about arbitrary power battles within social groups?
Yeah, I think we're kind of starting to circle a little bit, because I think from my reading of philosophers that once you eliminate God from the equation, right, once you're trying to look at it, they do go back, most of them, to human flourishing and evaluating things on how many people within a given society feel like they're achieving their ends, or they're feeling like they're the happiest. In the United States of America, we've got the Declaration of Independence, which basically lays out, this is why we're setting up this government. It's to preserve the rights of the people so that they can figure out life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness on their own.
The Declaration of Independence is about the individual having
rights. Yes, it is.
Which again it seems to fly in the face of the idea of the most good for the most people, because it says in the Declaration, the basic idea is you have rights. Even if it's does more good for more people, they can't take away it from you, because you as the individual have rights, which are inherent in you, given to you by your creator. We won't need to go into that. But my thing is on what basis does the collective say that the individual's well-being takes priority over the well-being of the group? I thought this was about the most good for the most people.
Well, by focusing on the individual, this is the Enlightenment Theory. It provides the opportunities for most people to discover for themselves what is right within that society. That's the whole idea of kind of libertarian approach to politics, is that you have just minimal rules, right, and allow people to explore freedom of religion. In this country, you're going to be able to find the religion that fits you the best. But as a government, we're just going to focus on these basic rights, right? We're going to make sure these are what we're protecting, and we'll have laws and courts. But as far as finding your purpose and finding your culture and your moral center, the government is going to be agnostic about that, right? Separation of church and state. That's how I see that, is that by focusing on the individual, giving the individual the right to pursue their happiness, their life and liberty, it maximizes for that society opportunities for flourishing. So that's why I'm saying the focus on the individual is the right way to go.
And I can see, so basically, let me see if what you're saying is, if I understand it, is that the best way to maximize your own individual well-being is to grant other people their own individual autonomy, and to not rob them of their
essentially right. Yes. Yeah. The universal human rights helps everybody. Right. And so it's kind of like a social contract. We'll get together and say, hey, in this country, we're going to support universal rights. We'll have a Bill of Rights, First Amendment, Second Amendment, Third Amendment. We're going to lay these things out to help maximize within our society what we believe will result in human flourishing. And it seems to have worked pretty well as long as it's in place.
And I agree. There's a level of human cooperation that is needed, let's say, for and I want to grant this point. There's a level of individual cooperation that's needed for you as an individual to flourish. There just is. But this is where I think where the calculations tend to fall apart, is that the morality that I look at, the group still, to me as the individual, is a means to my end. The only reason I value the group is to the degree that the group benefits me. The group has no inherent value in the sense of I need to sacrifice myself and my well-being for the good of the group as a whole. That's where some of this stuff rationally, again, there are limits to it, as I see it. It just,
You're starting to sound like Ayn Rand.
I think Ayn Rand had something to say.
Yeah,
and I think
Ayn Rand talks about, the individual is the key and rational self-interest.
Well, the thing is, I don't like, again, I don't believe it. The problem is we create the collective as if it were a thing. The collective is just a group of it's a bunch of individuals who have like gotten together with a similar objective in mind. And I agree that can produce great flourishing. But I don't think human beings held slaves throughout literally all of human history because it was so bad for them. I think they did it because it increased their well-being in a world of limited resources. And I think the reason that we don't have slaves today, a lot of it has to do, I think it has to do primarily with Christianity. And then number two, I would say it also has to do with technology. The fact that we can produce such abundance. I think technology has changed what you might call the moral landscape in huge degrees. Because I'll tell you what, when scarcity happens, everyone's like universal, like be good to everyone goes away real fast when your babies are hungry. Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. And so my thing is, while I agree that the well-being of the collective is what we're describing with moral language, it doesn't seem to translate to the level of the individual, because the individual doesn't give a crap ultimately about the good of the group, except for in relation to how that group benefits them. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and hit the subscribe button. Also, if you want more content, including the podcast, go to thoughtful-faith.com. Thanks for watching.